County and National Sheriff's Institute. He belongs to quite a few, he's had quite a bit of professional training. He has lots of certifications, and he's involved in the community both professionally and personally in different things with church and different things with the Fire Association and the Sheriff's Association. He's a like member of the Sheriff's Association. I am going to turn it over to Smokey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the song On Top of Old Smokey. There's another version, and I thought real hard, but I'm smarter than that, and I will not sing it. It has different words. We were trying to figure out when I was here last, and I know I was sheriff, so that was at least 12 years ago. And certainly I appreciate the invitation to such a good group, and I see lots of people and faces out here that I know or should know, so thank you. So for the last 7 years, I've continued to work for Tippecanoe County as the Emergency Management Director. At the Sheriff's Office, we had 150 some employees, and where I'm at now, there's 4, and I'm one of those. So it's a lot harder to get things done. But we have we have a staff of 4 paid people, and we have 30 volunteers. We get a lot done, and half of our salaries are reimbursed by the federal government to the state, to the county. And we have a lot of hoops we have to jump through to make that happen. But very basically, if you don't know that, you live in a very good community, and in this community we have very, very good public safety agencies that are well equipped, highly trained. We all get along, and you really probably nowhere in Indiana could you be safer than you are right here. So we're continually working to make ourselves better, but overall it's a very good, well-oiled machine for public safety that you all pay for. It's expensive to do. There are a lot of salaries and a lot of equipment and things like that, but I can tell you it's worth it. So I have some slides. I want to show you just different things that we do, but I don't want to leave here today without preaching just a little bit. In this position, I don't want to use the word preach again, but we do harp on people being prepared. There's lots of bad things that happen in the world. You can just turn the news on at any time and see. It could be something very simple like you're driving to Indianapolis, and if there's a semi that has a very minor accident and blocks both lanes in front of you, guess what? You're going to be parked there for hours. It could be longer, and it's not too bad if it's 70 degrees, but if it's 100 degrees or if it's 20 below zero and you only have a quarter of a tank of fuel, it could turn bad in a hurry. So you could all do, and I'm sure many of you do that. You're prepared. You should be prepared at home, when you travel, at school and work, wherever you go. A blanket, some extra cash, a flashlight, a hat, and gloves. Again, it's very, very simple, but you'd be surprised how far that'll go when you really need it. I think probably 2 or 3 years ago, it was around Christmas, or it was very cold, and I got a call about 5 a.m. from Richard Doyle, the fire chief in Lafayette. He said, "Are you aware they've closed, the interstate's been closed for 10 hours? I said, "No, I'm up in Auburn, Indiana. I didn't know anything about it." He goes, "I'm in Iowa." He goes, "I just got a phone call." So it was a cold day with freezing rain, and it happened, and there was a few minor accidents, and when that happened, all the traffic stopped, and then when the traffic stopped, the roads continued to freeze, the salt trucks can't get through, so there were people, literally hundreds and hundreds of cars that were just, and there was some mistakes made, but there were hundreds of cars stuck on the interstate out here, maybe thousands, for hours. So it does happen, and you can do a lot to be prepared to eliminate that. You never know what might happen when you're at home if you have to leave your house. Again, if your cell phone quits for some reason, or in one case, we had a lady out by Fort Weatnan driving through the flooded roadway. Her phone, she had a phone and a pin light, and she was driving west of Fort Weatnan through standing water, couldn't see where the road is, drove off the road, was in the ditch. Her cell phone was on the hump of her little pickup. The only thing she had was a flashlight, and she was flashing it like this for hours, and somebody saw it and called us, and we went out and got her out, and she was dry. She was kneeling on the seat of her little pickup for hours. So those things can happen, very, very quickly, and I want you to be prepared and not put yourself in those positions. I'm done preaching. As I mentioned before, we have an office of 3 that are paid, and the rest, we have 30 volunteers, are very well dedicated volunteers, if I can figure this out. We have a hazmat team of about 16 people. Lafayette Fire has a hazmat team, Purdue Fire has a hazmat team, and we're really the 3rd in the county, and we respond in the county or wherever we're needed, but also anywhere in our Homeland Security District, which is Tippecanoe and the surrounding counties in Cass County and Logansport. I'm just going to go through these. This is just a heptane spill on the interstate in July of 2014. It doesn't look too bad, but the road is closed both ways for hours. There's heptane everywhere, and it has a very, very low ignition point, so we had to close the interstate. It can happen pretty quickly. This was just south of that. This was when they had just started with the 3-laning the north and southbound lanes of I-65. I guess it says July of 2015. There were 5 people killed. Traffic was stopped. Semi southbound didn't even put his brakes on. Sad, but we responded to the scene because of all the hazmat issues with fluids, diesel fuels, and such is why we were there. Same thing. Nasty. This was in Warren County. I think we had 25 detasselers that were sprayed by an aircraft doing crop dusting, fungicide, and the vehicle in the background is a piece of equipment that we have. It's a decontamination shower. It has 3 big diesel water heaters in the back. We hook a fire hose to it for a water supply, and we can run many, many people through there. And as this little young gentleman's coming out with paper clothes that we give them. So that's just one thing that we do. That's just equipment. I maybe didn't mention earlier, we have maintained lots of equipment throughout the county that we share with public safety. We have a big mobile operations center, over $1 million, that we share with all the public safety agencies in this county and really our Homeland Security District 4. We just responded to a train accident, derailment in Carroll County. It turned out it really wasn't much. When we got there, they said it had some hazardous materials on it, but it was contaminated soil, so it was no big deal. But that's just maybe to give you a flavor of what we do sometimes. This is south on I-65, hydrochloric acid spill, a tanker that just rolled over, and those are some of our volunteers on the hazmat team. Then we have an EMA division, which is probably one that you would see more often. We do storm spotting. They work the Purdue games, the Christmas parade, Fort Weatnan, the different events, the county fair, and they do a lot of things to support other public safety agencies, again with our volunteers. This was a pallet fire down at 28 and 52. I guess I didn't realize it was in 2013. There were 60 fire departments there. And really our job there, I guess we tried to manage that, help set up a command post and manage that. And we had volunteers that brought light towers down, generators with lights on them, and message boards and traffic arrows and such for that. Tornadoes, this was one that kind of popped up on a Sunday. I guess it was 2013 as well. Tippecanoe County since 1950 has more confirmed tornadoes, a lot more. I've lost track. I would say maybe 8 or 10 more confirmed tornadoes than any county in Indiana. I think, one, because we do a good job, and our office has traditionally done a good job with Purdue's help, and went out, in 1950 or 51 and said, yes, that was a tornado. No, it wasn't a tornado. But at any rate, they happen really quite frequently. Of the last 12 tornado warnings that we've had, or tornadoes that we've had, probably 4 of those we got with no watch, no warning or anything. So you have to watch your surroundings. Purdue recently put on top of Wang Hall, there's a radar dome that didn't have radar in it. It now has radar in it, so that'll help us all out. This was Southwestern High School. That's where I graduated back in the day. The tornado hit there. I would have been west of this. We were out storm spotting when these storms came through, and it almost turned my Suburban over. And just within minutes, I was on radio saying, "Hey, I think it's passed. I'm seeing the sun's shining." And our radio operator quickly told me, stand by, because the storm was just hitting them at the time, and I had already lived through it. This is the video. I guess it is playing itself. It sucks the west wall out, then it blows the south wall out, and this is just the wind coming into the school. It takes some steel door frames with big solid doors and blows those out into the band room and destroys what I call a soundproof room. That's I call it kind of bulletproof, but it was really soundproof. I think this may go for a minute, and I'm not. Well, maybe I better let it go. Nobody was in the school then. Obviously, I had been out to Southwestern previously to this and identified a bunch of shelters. And we determined had everybody been in their shelters, there really would have been, everybody should have been completely safe, maybe except one little area. They may have got some glass debris. And as soon as that's done, we'll move on to several of the school. So it did millions of dollars of damage to Southwestern and Mintani. Came on through just south of Nanshan to Blusto Pine. Right there at Veterans Memorial and 52, and then it went on to hit Subaru and out through the county, and really only affected a few residents, few homes. I think it's done. I'm going to take a chance. This is just some of the damage. So the wall that we're looking at straight ahead is the west wall, and there is no debris there because it's basically the wind or the vacuum of the tornado sucked all that cement blocks out, and they were all outside. Then the wind got into the school and it pushed the south wall out, and again they were all outside as well. There's several videos of this through the school corporation's video cameras that we're running. This fan that's on the floor, this one we saw go across the floor, it was in the cafeteria. There's a shot of that on another video. It's just standing up, and it opens the 2 doors, sucks those 2 doors open, blows the fan clear across the gym, and then, if you noticed on the video, it sucked it right back. So there's lots of power, and this was an EF2 tornado. Took the roof off the building, and these are just some shots. So you wouldn't want to have been in there as a student. But the doors were closed, and the hallway, the carpet looked like it was just vacuumed, if you can believe that. I'm going to go back to that. if you see those lights are hanging, they're supposed to be wired on both sides, and those were only wired on one side, so they really created a problem, and the school corporation went back and since made sure all those lights are wired up correctly. They're power-wise they were, but to hold them in there, they're just wired in there. I guess that's part of the band room. Nobody was hurt. That's the good thing. This was really an ice jam in the Wildcat. This is right at State Road, the old State Road 25 at the Wildcat Creek. The creek was slowed down with trees that was in a log jam, and when this ice came down, it came up so fast, and we had to go in the middle of that night and rescue a bunch of people from there. But I don't have any of those slides. Same thing. They deal with floodwater all the time, but this was kind of rare. It came up very quickly. These are, again, just some slides. Briefly, Indiana is made up of 10 Homeland Security districts, and we are District 4, and each district may or may not have a task force to help themselves and help other counties or areas that need help. We have a very strong task force made up of 5 or 6 different elements. We have a law enforcement, police, fire, EMS. We have a team, a management team, incident management team, and we have a service and support branch that keeps everybody going. So this was, we got a call, I can't remember when, around 5 o'clock. I think the tornadoes hit in Henryville. It was an EF4 tornado that went through 2 or maybe 3 counties down there. I was on the ground for 49 miles. And we sent, I can't remember how many vehicles, but 100 and some people. And we loaded up in a few hours and convoyed down to help them. And we got down there 4:30 in the morning. And we have our own big tents and air conditioners and furnaces and everything but it takes a while to set them up. And there was an old sheriff in the group called the jail, and that's where we slept. That was the best idea I had that weekend. Later that day, we were able to get into a warehouse and set up again. So we take everything, including food, and we eat very good. We take MREs, our water, fuel, as much fuel as we can carry, ice, everything that we might need to go down and help these people. Our own radio system that we take, and we're really trying to be self-sufficient so they have their own problems without taking care of us. And this was just a couple shots here from Henryville. It happened right as the school was letting out, and we've talked a lot about this. The safest place is in a school building, not a school bus, but down there they decided to put everybody on the buses and send them out. One bus stopped at a village pantry, and village pantries have basements, if you didn't know that. They made it to the basement of the village pantry. There was nobody in this bus when it was hit, but we preached to people to stay inside a secure, big brick building like they would have been, but that school was largely destroyed, so as it turned out, they made the right decision. That we were down there helping. Something that I remember is we were walking down the road, and the railroad crossing arm, big silver steel pipe with flashing lights on it, it just took it and looked like a semi ran over it. It was the wind, and right across the pavement, it ripped the asphalt up, scoured it up. So you don't want to be there. Some different shots. It's just devastating. Kind of the same thing. There's not a lot we can do to avoid this, but with the proper warning, we have 74 outdoor warning sirens that you hear. They're outdoor warning sirens, so if you're inside your house and you can't hear it, unless it's in your backyard, we're good with that. But another takeaway for today is there's so many ways for you to be notified. The weather radio does a very good job. You should have one of those. If it happens in the middle of the night,
you don't know it, or you can have an app on your phone that goes off when we have a tornado warning, not a flood warning, not a blizzard warning. Tornado warning is what you need to have your phone programmed for. And your weather radar, you can program those the same way. That's our biggest fear. It happens in the night and nobody knows about it. Again, some just major damage down there. I just got back from a trip a couple days ago. We went through Joplin, Missouri, when they were hit. An EF5 hit them, destroyed 7,500 homes in one swoop. So, again, we should consider ourselves lucky. Hurricane Sandy, that would have been in October of 12. We sent a task force, or really just EMS task force and service and support out. They ended up in Maryland, I'm not exactly sure. They got out there and did a lot of good. These are shots from there. A lot of sand. It was just like drifting snow, only it was sand. Our folks stayed at the Air Marshal's training grounds out there in a big secure building with generators. And the same thing. This was a year ago. We went to Texas. It was kind of a late finding. They had 50-some inches of rain. A lot of people were flooded, and they didn't have enough resources down there, so they called for more, and Indiana sent 28 conservation officers, two 14-man swiftwater rescue teams, and our service and support unit went down to support them in their efforts. I think the next slides, a very quick story. We got down there, went to a staging area for one night, and they sent us to, where did I just say? Did you read that? Beaumont. I couldn't think of it. And so we were heading an hour and a half away. There was very few fuel stations that were open or had fuel. We were driving our convoy of all big trucks and pickups and trucks with big trailers, generators, everything. We took everything that we were going to need, and I figured out where we were going, and I called and talked to the airport and said, hey, we're from Indiana. We're coming in to help. We're going to set up at the airport. No one, including the people who sent us, knew what to expect. So I just wanted to kind of grease the wheels. I could just think of Purdue's airport and think I was talking, and it was kind of a similar in size airport. And the lady said, well, I'll have the airport manager call you back. He's in a meeting. He called me back. He was kind of animated, and I explained to him what we're doing, and he said, I'll mess this up. He said, you want to know where the head of the snake is? It's right here. He goes, you want to talk to the person's in charge? Everybody's in charge. He goes, I got to go, and hung up on me. So I wasn't sure what to expect. When we got there, I think you can see on the next slides, we were kind of on an island. We were surrounded by water. We had to drive like a mile through 8 inches of water to get there, and they had evacuated hospitals, nursing homes, and everything, and this airport was set up as just an evacuation site, so people were coming in really, and some of them barefoot when they were evacuated, and they were getting on a big military plane. Here, there's one taking off, and there's another one in the background, and they're just loaded with evacuees taking them to Houston. So that's part of the being prepared thing. You at least want to put a pair of shoes on. Those were medical helicopters. These are medical air ambulances where they were flying people out all over the southern part of the nation down there. It was an absolute mess. I think there should be sound with it. It's kind of deafening. these are just, again, shots of some things at the airport. These are most of those are all Indiana DNR equipment and boats. Then we were sent to this other area at last to help them. Again, we were 10 minutes away, and it took us 4 hours to get there. Again, driving through different things of water. And we set up at a church. Even though we had all of our tents, it was 90 degrees and 100% humidity. We have air conditioners and generators, but it was so much nicer to be in a church. And they were very happy to see us all there. I'll just whip through these very quickly. This was our commissary trailer. Looks like I just stuffed some bacon in my mouth. We ate very well, and we kept which we were supposed to do, feed our DNR officers, service and support, again, all of our bottled water and everything we had to handle and bring down with us. The cooks love to eat. That was in Lumberton, another church where we stayed. That may be the last slide. It's not, but it's going to be. So in general, the takeaways are, again, make sure you have working smoke detectors in your house. You have some kind of plan about how you're going to evacuate. If you have young children or grandchildren or older parents, or if you're the older parent, make sure somebody's going to be there to help you and take care of you. If your house is hit by lightning and no one else is involved, we can have so many policemen and firemen and ambulances there, we could eat your house. But if we have a tornado go through and we have a hospital hit and a nursing home hit, we're going to be spread out very quickly. So we want you to be prepared at least a little bit. The federal government wants you to be prepared for 72 hours with some bottled water, some food that you don't have to cook. I don't want to say the world's come to an end, but it just makes your life easier if it does happen. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
You said have a plan to evacuate. Evacuate to where?
Well, it depends. If there's an anhydrous ammonia tanker turned over and right in front of your house and the clouds coming your way, we don't care where you go. Typically, yes. Typically, there would be a shelter. And when we set shelters up, most people don't want to go to a shelter because they have friends, family, neighbors where they can go, and that's your best bet. But if you have to go to a shelter, we would let you know where. The Red Cross does all of our sheltering. They recommend that like if you have a bunch of family here and we had something very bad happen here, and you got separated, that you call your sister in Virginia or somewhere and coordinate there. Your plan could even have a spot where you're going to meet, your aunt who lives south of Monticello or wherever. That's the worst case. When they went to Hurricane Sandy, when we were down south at Harvey there, texting still worked. There was no phone service, but we could send text almost everywhere. So that's something to keep in mind. But your phone, if it's not charged and you don't have a charger or you don't have a car charger, you could be in trouble pretty quickly. Yes, sir.
Did your group get involved in North Carolina?
We did not. Some of the DNR officers that went with us went down there in District 2, which is South Bend, that area. They have a swiftwater rescue. They was the only controllable white water in the Northern Hemisphere up there at the East Race in South Bend. So they do a lot of training and things, and they have a top-notch swiftwater team. So they were deployed in pre-position down there. But we were ramping up and watching the news, trying to figure out if we were going to go. That's a long way to go, and we were surprised that we went to Harvey. There's a lot of people a lot of responders between us and there, but they chose Indiana for some reason. Yes?
Who calls you in to something like that when you get called to Harvey?
The state.
Is it the governor?
Well, ultimately, yes, but it's the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. And when we go as agents at the state, and they reimburse Tippecanoe County for our salaries and fringe benefits and fuel, and everything's paid by, in that case, ultimately, it was all paid by Texas. And I just had to answer an email here a couple days ago, still trying to figure out fringe benefits for somebody, so it's long and complicated, but we're getting better with a better system in place. Yes, sir.
About how many times a year are you deployed to?
The ones that you just saw, since I've been here again for 7 years, so we've been put on standby several times, and just one day this week, maybe Tuesday, we took some equipment down to Attica that had a house filled with natural gas and explode, and we took our mobile operations center, and they were originally called for our hazmat team, and we found out they didn't need us. But so we help here locally a lot more than we do out of state. Yeah, it's very rare. It has to be a big event. Yeah. Yes.
Do you have any opinions on, because you were talking about smoke detectors, do you have any opinions on metal roofs? There's been some discussion on the safety of that.
I'm a volunteer fireman. As a firefighter, they're harder for us to get through. And if you can't get through them and you can't ventilate them, it holds the heat in longer. On a side note, my house was hit by lightning about 18 months ago, and I wasn't at home, and we had 7 fire departments there. I drove 2 hours to get to it and still helped put the fire out. And I thought you were going to go to lightning. Our insurance company has since told us that lightning rods, if you have lightning rods, you're more apt to be hit by lightning. So they would give discounts before if you had lightning rods and alarm system. We had an alarm system. It came in as a burglar alarm. So the takeaway of that is have good smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. And I think other than that, I don't see a downside to a metal roof. A lot of people are going to them. If you put a metal roof over a regular roof, it just helps insulate it that much more, and it's that holds the heat in a lot. Yes.
Should carbon monoxide detectors be mounted low or high?
I can't answer that. I was told it didn't make any difference as I think about it. It doesn't make any difference where they were. My last house, which is exactly where my current house is, I had one just plugged in on a counter in the mudroom kind of thing. So you can buy those. They are cumulative, so they build up and build up. If you have a tiny carbon monoxide leak in your furnace, or your car's running in the garage maybe, and it's not sealed, if a little gets in every day, once it gets so much in, it'll go into an alarm. And the fire department, I would absolutely call the fire department. They come out with air detectors and track that down for you. Yeah, so that can happen, but you should have a working smoke detector on every level. I say in every bedroom or outside every bedroom. That's exactly what's going to hurt you. Yes, did I see a hand back there? Maybe not. Oh, Rodney, did you have a question?
I'd like to, when you talk to one in Henryville, when you leave here, just kind of walk us through what you actually do once you arrive there.
Okay. Everything's orchestrated like that. We train to do that. We mobilized at the fairground. We have people from Crawfordsville, Frankfort, Monticello, and then honestly the majority of the responders come from Tippecanoe County. The big paid fire departments are all very good and provide equipment and personnel. And we have to check with NDOT and get a route to take, like in this case, because some roads were closed and they want us to take certain roads, just like the Army convoys have to do.
So this is like a logistic effort?
Yes, yeah, it really is. And again, they told us to go down and camp in this park. And again, if they would have figured out that we were going to get there at 4:30 in the morning and have to be ready to go at 6 a.m., my idea of sleeping on the jail floor was pretty good. because it takes 2 or 3 hours to set up our camp. And then basically our firefighters, there was the area we went to was New Pekin, and it's covered by a volunteer fire station. So we went there, and basically, as it turns out, they weren't really overwhelmed. But had they been, we could just worked in with them and relieved them. Same with the police officers and everybody that went.
So would you also coordinate the efforts like for Salvation Army and Red Cross in with all of that?
No, that would be a volunteer donation, and that was set up. Actually, I take that back. Initially, we didn't. We left an incident management team there. Again, these are people who help make decisions and coordinate things, and they did work on that. They first set the first donation drop-off point was the Rest Park right on the interstate right there, and just within hours they were overwhelmed by people bringing things in and semis dropping off stuff. So they didn't have that thought through very good. So you need an area where you can get in and sort it, and there was so much water, bottled water everywhere you went down there. There was Walmart brought semis of bottled water in within a day and helped. So Purdue actually sent a bus. I worked with Mike Pickett. This was maybe the following week, and they took a whole bus of volunteers to go down there, basically picked up debris and that kind of thing. But sometimes it's harder to manage those volunteers, if they're coming in and, you got to park the bus and block the road and that kind of thing. So I don't know if I answered your question, but initially we were just dealing with life safety issues. That's why we were called. Yes. Yes, sir.
Did I see Jim Lewis' picture on it?
That was Jim Lewis.
I saw it in there, because he talked about that there were times that they were so gladly welcomed down there that people they would stop at some places and people would bring them food. And one place it says that somebody gave them all the gasoline, filled all their gasoline in.
Yeah.
Because they were so welcome.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Going down, we have, I can't remember, we had 8 flat tires going down. And
talk about that.
And we had Mr. and Mrs. Tires check those out before we went. And they said it's not common because of the heat from the pavement down there. And again, our trailers sit around a lot of times and don't run. That's hard on them. I remember going to Walmart and, I went into several places. I went into this tire stop, kind of like a Mr. and Mrs. Tire. And they said, hey, we're on a task force. I said, I want you to change that tire as fast as you can. I'm going to throw it in my Suburban and go back and catch him. I said, how soon can you do that? He said, 3 minutes. And he was right. I was running out the door. I went to a Walmart. It took longer at Walmart, and he said there's no charge.
Wow.
Yeah.
They really appreciate it. Oh, wow.
Yep. So, I will say that down there, again, we got there late because we were called late, but the Cajun Navy that comes in with all their fishing boats and duck boats, they're the ones that rescued everybody, or the majority of the people. They were one of the churches we were in. There was a task force from Texas, and there was one from California. But by the time you can get those guys there, and they figure out where they're at, everything else, the locals and the people who, I hate to say self-deploy because we're not supposed to do that, but that's who saved people. So I'm a big proponent of that. Yes, sir. Okay.
A few months ago on Reader's Digest, it had a good article about the Cajun Navy saving people, and there was a lady at home who got on the internet, and she was with the ham operators and whatever, and they were guiding the Cajun Navy to the various different streets and picking people up. And one lady was up on her kitchen counter, and one of the biggest problems was having the snakes in the kitchen.
Yeah, I just got back from Texas, and my son brought his son a little rattle from a rattlesnake. So yeah, that's kind of scary. Those are the people who help, and it would happen. It happens here, everywhere, really. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Smokey, a lot of good information.
Thank you.
And, as a small token, gift from the Kiwanis
Thank you
Club.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next week.